Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Sangat Ji, as per the bachan of Dhan Sri Guru Arjan Dev Ji Sache Paatshah Ji, Amar Ji say that seva kart hoye neh kami tisko hot prapt swami. Guru Arjan Dev Ji Maharaj Ji is describing, is telling us what seva actually is, what it actually means to be selfless. And they say seva kart hoye neh kami. It's when you're desireless. It's when you're doing something so effortlessly and you've got no label attached to it. You're just doing it from where it's born from where. Just like Guru Nanak Dev Ji Paatshah Ji said, Taul Taram Daya Ka Poot. It's born from compassion. Because the mother of righteousness, the mother of Dharam, is compassion. And we're blessed today to have those people amongst us that are working from a place of compassion, are working from that place of being nehkami, being completely desireless, and just doing it out of seeing the suffering of the world and what is needed out there, and that is their driving force. So today we're blessed to have with us from Binti International, Manjeet Kaur, and she's going to share her experiences with us today. She's going to share with us where the word Binti has even come from. So let us all speak to Manjeet Kaur and learn about the project Binti. Panji, Binti, what is it? Where does it come from?
Well, our vision is to create a world where all women have menstrual dignity. I used to work with a young lady in Nairobi. I was mentoring her and helping her increase the revenue of her business. And one day she said to me, Manjit, do you know that women in Africa don't have access to menstrual products? And
Wow.
I said, what do you mean they don't have access? Because I was really shocked. It never crossed my mind that a woman wouldn't have access. And then she said, well, they use cow dung, they use leaves, they use sand. Some girls as young as 10 will sell themselves because that's the only way that they can afford products.
That's obviously the first time you're hearing something like that, and even for myself, obviously I've watched some of your videos in the past, and then when I first heard that, it was absolutely shocking. It didn't even cross my mind that there's such even an issue out there. It didn't even register. So was that the same for you?
I think it was exactly the same, and it's only now when I start reflecting back on why I started, I realised that actually, because I've worked in a very male-dominated environment all my career, if I didn't have a pad, there's no way I would have done any of the things that I had. And this idea that girls are in that situation, having to deal with something that isn't their fault.
So Panji, I want to know what was going through your mind at that moment when you was receiving this information. What was going on?
I think it was just this disbelief, because you can't imagine that a girl is bleeding and she doesn't have a pad. I mean, it was just complete shock. And then I guess my mind went into overdrive and I started thinking about all those times and situations that you would need a pad to be able to live your life, right?
Of course.
Go to work, leave the house, absolutely anything. I mean, simple things. If you think about all the rock stars and all the sporting women out there, what do they do when they're on their period if they didn't have a pad? So
was it instant for you when that phone, you put the phone down? What did you do? What happened?
I think I spent a few minutes trying to understand what she meant by the fact that they don't have access, and then I started researching menstruation, periods, pads, and there wasn't that much online then when we started. And then we just continued conversation. I said, okay, I need some more information, send me some stuff. So she started researching, I started researching, and that's kind of when we found Padman.
Then I ran away being an husband. I saw a very nasty cloth, a rag cloth. Even I don't use that cloth to clean my two-wheeler. Then I understand that she is adopting that unhygienic method to manage the period days. Then I asked my wife, why there are sanitary napkins you are using that unhygienic method? She replied immediately, I also know there is sanitary napkin, I am watching TV. But if myself and other women in our family start using napkin, we have to cut our family milk budget, she replied. I shocked, what is the connection between the sanitary napkin and cutting the milk budget?
sent him an email saying that we'd like to speak to him, like to find out a little bit more about his work. I then flew to Nairobi, interviewed about 100 girls, because I really needed to hear the story.
So after how long did you fly to Nairobi from that phone conversation?
Probably like 6-8 weeks later.
6-8 weeks?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. I think it was just one of those things, because I've been in business all my life, and I've had lots of ideas, and but I've never actually followed up on them. And it wasn't that I thought, okay, I'm going to go and set up a business and this is what I'm going to do.
I think that's one of the most important things is implementation, and then where a lot of us sit around and we've got so many ideas in our head and they kind of remain there, but actually to get out there and be then standing in Nairobi. And then what did you do once you was there?
Yeah, I was just wanted to hear the stories, so she took me around to a few of the slum areas, and I spoke to lots of girls, and the stories were just horrific. So she hadn't made any of it up. It was even more shocking to actually hear a girl.
You was getting to hear the stories firsthand from
the girls in the
from the girls from the village, and what did you hear? Well,
I remember one girl telling me that she used an empty chocolate box carton. She stuffed it with cotton wool, and while she was telling me this, I was trying to keep a straight face so I didn't look like I was horrified. But just this idea that she had a chocolate box carton between her legs, and of course she didn't go to school.
Is that like she would have discussed that with someone, or she would have just been in shock when she started, or?
I think it was just experimenting to try and find a way of absorbing the blood, so they tried different things.
And would they discuss that with someone?
No, because we don't talk about it, right? It's not something you talk about. And in fact, we know in Swaziland, if a girl starts menstruating, everybody assumes she started to have sex. So there's this other taboo over there where...
That's quite random.
Can you imagine that? you can't tell your mum that you've been bleeding for 5 weeks, which is really abnormal, and you need to see a doctor, because she's going to think this, and your reputation.
So what other type of methods were girls using? What else did you find?
Over there, animal skin, cotton wool, rags, newspaper.
You mentioned you came across girls that actually sold themselves.
Yeah. And
they were as young as
10. It's a known fact.
And then that's why, for me, being someone that travels and goes and is around the youth of today and in universities, and one of the questions I ask them is, do you know what's happening out there in the world? And we're so ignorant to some of the things that are actually taking place out there, but we've got information of so much to hand now. What did you do after that?
Then I went to India and did a similar exercise because I wanted to meet the Padman, or his name is Murugan, but also kind of hear the stories on the ground there. And in India, only 12% of women have access to.
Yeah, again, like, you know, I've seen this from your videos, but it's just, again, very shocking. Like, for me, I would have thought of it the other way around, because the India that we see now, I go to Delhi, go to Punjab, go to Jalandhar, these built-up cities, and you just think, you know, India's getting there now. But to say that only 12% have access, that's horrendous. How are they coping in India?
So in India they use rags, and when I say rags, they're not using the white cotton, terry cotton thing that you would think. They'll tear up saris and suits, and which still have sequins and things on them, or zippers or whatever, because they're using material or fabric that would otherwise be discarded. And then they share the cloth, or they don't dry it properly. So what happens is, when they wash the cloth, they stick it under their manja. It doesn't get any sunlight, and you know what happens to a cloth or any item that we wear? It starts to smell and gets bacteria, and it's those things.
And is that quite common? So
I think the other thing to bear in mind is, if you ask someone, do you have a problem, the first thing they always say is no, right?
But they probably think that's normal.
Well, they don't know it. Well, they know better, because obviously there's advertising for pads.
Okay.
But it's a choice between affording a glass of milk or milk for the family and pads for the girls in the house, right? So it's that affordability that becomes an issue.
So what does Binti actually mean? What do you do now?
So Binti in Swahili means young lady, in Arabic it means daughter, in Punjabi and Hindi obviously Binti is a request. We have 3 areas of work that we do. The first one is the provision of menstrual products. In India we work with people like Murugan, where we set up projects and they produce their own pads. In the UK we run collection drives and then we deliver them to the homeless women in domestic violence shelters, refugee camps, low-income communities. In fact, we delivered a truckload of pads to the Red Cross in Plymouth for the refugees there just after Christmas.
And I suppose a lot of these organisations, not undermining anyone, don't actually think of pads being one of the things that they to distribute.
1 in 10 people still don't have access to clean water. Okay. So imagine all those organisations that are out there and how much work they've been doing, but we're still in 1 in 10. When there is a disaster, we do drop food, we do drop water, but we don't think that we need to drop pads, and women still bleed. The food shelters in the UK, we provide food and we provide water, we don't provide menstrual pads.
Is it because you think it's not even crossing the mind? Like,
yeah, I don't think it's a conversation. It's the biggest elephant in the room. We don't talk about it, and because we don't talk about it, we don't know about all the problems associated with it.
Would you say it comes down to lack of education? Because for someone like myself, I've always thought about, you know, those that haven't got any shelter and maybe making some sort of shelter for them, food. Never has it crossed my mind. I've been in India and obviously seen slum areas and gone out, tried to do what we can to build little houses for people, but never did it cross my mind that how do these women actually cope during their time of month. And I think that comes down to lack of education.
It does, and if you ask a girl what a period is in India, the only thing she knows is that she's dirty. She doesn't know where the blood comes from, why she bleeds, or how to take care of herself. And even in the UK, because we live in this society where we keep everything quiet, I mean, if I was to start, I'd still whisper to my colleague, do you have a pad?
Surely isn't that education provided for them in India,
well,
at their schools?
We have sex education in the UK, but how many people can actually explain the biology of a period? Not many. And we know this because we go out on the streets and we talk to people face to face like you and I.
Yeah, and I'm sure it can be quite... it could probably get quite humorous when you were looking at the responses of when they're asked that question.
Because it's an embarrassment. Oh my God, I don't actually know anything about menstruation. How do I not know anything about menstruation? You know, it's that you can see that psychological thinking.
What would you say is key for Binti? Would you say it's trying to provide the pads, or would you say it's education about girls getting to know and boys getting to know, prepping them before they actually have their first period? And
I think it's threefold. It's smashing the shame so that we can eliminate the stigma and the taboo, and we can only do that through education. But while we're providing education, obviously we want to provide pads for these girls and women, because when they don't have pads, they drop out of school, right? They drop out of school, which means we perpetuate this cycle of poverty. Does that actually happen?
Because for me, that's like, well, you know, it's just so far kind of, it's just so in the distance, like I can't even relate to that. And so girls actually drop out of school.
Yeah, so imagine you're a girl, you don't have access, and you're bleeding, and you're bleeding and you don't have anything, so you can't leave the house, can you? Because someone's going to see the blood. So that's why they drop out, because they don't want to leave the house. And because they don't leave the house, and now everybody knows that they're menstruating, what do? They marry them off because they've stopped education. So we continue this cycle, and this cycle has to stop. If we want to give our girls izzat and respect, then we've got to make sure that we normalise the conversation, that girls and guys, fathers, can talk to their daughters.
So how is this education going to get out there? Because when we look at the concept of Gurbani as well, Gurbani talks about giving somebody wisdom, and once you shine that torch and that light, that's when somebody can actually, it creates a pathway for them to do something about a situation. So in Gurbani it says that Kabir Jaha Gyan Taha Taram hai, and Taram is righteousness, and what you're doing, this organization is doing, fits under Taram, and where does that come from? It comes from a place of compassion. And again, I think the more wisdom, the more light that is spread on this subject, I think that the more people will actually you know, be ready to do something and create more awareness and actually provide this education.
I think just a simple thing, just talking about it at home to start with.
Yeah.
With your sisters, with your mum, asking her what she used and getting that conversation started. And it is kind of a fearful thing because we've never talked about it with our own mums. But then once that's started, you find it becomes easier and easier. The first time you actually say period out aloud, it's quite liberating. From I'm saying this because it's important to make that change. I'm not saying it because I'm a feminist and I've gone crazy, right? I'm saying it because unless we start talking about it, we can't ever help these girls. So if people want to help, get involved. We did a Binti menstrual train the trainer program last week, which you kindly came along to, because ultimately it's about spreading the word. Let's get the word out there.
No, it, like being a part of that training, it definitely makes a difference. Like, you know, it does make you more compassionate towards, like, for me, towards my partner, and actually thinking. And like you said, that work does start from home, and it's kind of having that compassion first of all for those that are around you at home, and really thinking about them during that time and about the pain they might be in, the cramps, everything else, and just being there, like, you know, really considering.
And once you learn it, right, you can't unlearn it. You can't unlearn it, and what happens is you keep giving that education to the next generation.
Question for me is, like, so during this journey, has obviously your roots, you're born into a Sikh family. At any point did you feel that this is something that the Sikh community would support you in doing?
I think I never questioned it for a second, because I know what Guru Nanak Dev Ji said, and I know about how we have equality in our lives for men and women. And I think I was quite shocked when I started hearing stories recently about the fact that we can't do Kirtan or we can't do Seva when we're menstruating, because I know very clearly that it's not religion, it's culture. We can't touch the ajar, that's culture, it's very clear. So, yeah.
Did your inspiration for doing this work, was it linked with your Sikh background or root, or?
I think I found out more recently that actually it's part of who I am, and I didn't even know it. It's about helping people. I've always helped people, but I didn't realise that this work that I'm doing is seva, because we're doing it selflessly. But I guess...
And that is the translation to selflessly, when you actually don't know what you're doing. So once you attach a label to it, you kind of lose that essence. But when you're just in it and you're just doing it from compassion. And that's why Guru Nanak said that whatever we do, when it comes from compassion, we can only but be successful. And that is the mother, and that's the root of everything, and that's where everything actually comes from. Guru Nanak Badshah did no rituals. Every act he done came from a place of compassion. If he fed someone, it's because he couldn't bear to see them hungry. Wherever he reached out to, whether it was somebody that ate human beings, a cannibal, which actually happened, Guru Nanak reached out to those people. Why? Because his heart went out to them, because he knew they were suffering. And when we see this suffering, and that can be evoked from inside of us as well, that compassion, and every human being has it. We're quite lucky to be a part of that lineage of Guru Nanak, and where that compassion is sitting there ready to make something happen in this world.
Yeah.
Sangat ji, as we're talking, I want everyone to check out the link for Binti below as well, and just click on the link and really find out what's going on, and check out the videos and be a part of this movement and be a part of what is going on and find out more. So
I think it's really important that we remember that just because it doesn't affect us doesn't mean it doesn't affect anyone else. And it's understanding that women bleed even if they have mental health, if they're blind, if they're deaf, if they're going to school, if they're sportswomen. Women bleed. Every woman bleeds once a month. And if you can get involved and help us and support us, then we can kind of get to the stage where all women have menstrual dignity.
So Sangat ji, when Guru Nanak Dev Ji Pacha was asked the question that what group do you belong to, Guru Nanak Pacha ji said, I Panthi, Sagal Jamati. They said, I belong to that class of all of humanity. And Guru Nanak Dev Ji Sache Pacha throughout their life truly showed that. And today, again, like we said, we're privileged to be amongst people that are actually living up to that as well, and not thinking about building a name for themselves, but is truly going out and reaching out to humanity, that where the suffering is actually, and seeing the need. So Sangat Ji, so it's a call out to all the Sangat to subscribe. Because of this YouTube channel, we've got that platform to reach out and share the great works of other organizations as well. So Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, share and subscribe. Please donate and help spread Guruji's message. Link is in the description below. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.